young, we have an amazing, positive outlook about how great life is going to be, but somewhere along the line, we forget to dream and end up settling. Join Up Dots features amazing people who refuse to give up and chose to go after their dreams. This is your blueprint for greatness. So here's your host, live from the back of his garden in the UK, David Ralph.
Yes, hello there. Good morning to you, world. Good morning to you. I hope you're all ready for an amazing show because we are going to deliver something quite special today. Quite special in the fact that it almost didn't happen. I have been recording all day, and as you hear me say time and time again on Join Up Dots, when you press the button should do what it's supposed to do. But for today, for some reason, I pressed all my settings and nothing happened. I didn't get a single bar of green, nothing. But fortunately, the guest is sort of hanging around and he is ready to roll because he is a man who he's been mentioned to me by many people since starting the show, and is also a man that I seem to stumble over across the internet time and time again. Take a look at Richard Branson's Necker Island, and who should I see wandering around but this guy? Go over to podcasts, blogs, ebooks, whatever, and you seem to find this man, his passion, his vision, and of course his work ethic everywhere you look. He is on fire for sure, but delve into his backstory and you'll find a man who could have ended up very differently. When he was just 2 years of age, his parents emigrated from Russia, and it seems obvious that this move has instilled in our guy a willingness to take risks and create his own destiny. By 14, he began by selling medical equipment for his father's College Park MD medical supply business, and 1998, he undertook his first entrepreneurial venture, a 9,000 marketing course for cosmetic surgeons. And by the time he was 26, he was making 10 grand to 15 grand a month, teaching physicians how to improve their sales, even though he thinks of himself as a techno dunce. Now, it's recorded that he's produced more than half a dozen seven-figure online businesses since then. So you can see that this is a guy with an eye for an opportunity and the hustle muscle to make it come true. But where is his focus now? What does he see as the true legacy that he will leave on the world? Well, let's find out as we bring onto the show to start joining up dots with the one and only Yanik Silva. Good afternoon, Yanik. How are you, sir?
Hey, David. Yeah, glad we can make this happen with the technical difficulties.
You are a man, I have a feeling, that can overcome any difficulties in your life. I think you have that kind of Elon Musk kind of way of thinking that you can just sort of power through. Would I be right on that, or is that a very simplistic way of looking at it?
I don't know for sure. I mean, I feel like I follow my heart so much, and on the way, what it looks like on the surface is, yeah, this guy has it figured out, and he's been able to get all these things going, but honestly, it's like kind of stumbling and fumbling, but using my heart as that direction spot.
And did you feel that it's stumbling and fumbling? Do you feel like you're like a duck and underneath the water your legs are going like clappers?
I actually, that's funny. I tell my kids that same thing about you look really calm on the top, and then your legs are going a mile a minute. But no, I don't. I just feel like I feel very, very, very content and in a spot where I know things will work out. Like I just have this philosophy that regardless of where I am or what's going on, that everything is the right way, and that there is a bigger lesson to be learned, or no matter what it is. And so if you can't go one way, you're going to go under, you're going to go over, you're going to figure it out. But I don't feel like I'm going to be the one that has to muscle it through necessarily, if you know what I mean there.
I know exactly what you mean. And we touch on this time and time again on the show, that it's a strange way. We hear hard work ethic. We hear all those kind of words bandied around, go out and do a good day's job, a hard day's night. But actually, when you're putting too much effort into something, more often than not, you're doing it the wrong way. Do you agree with that?
I do. And so, yeah, there's a couple things there. One is that what's hard work to me versus hard work to you? It's all completely relative. There's no objective. Someone will tell you have to wake up at 5 and you have to hustle till 10 o'clock at night, and you can barely see your family, and that's how you're going to build this mega successful company. But I don't know, that to me that seems really, really silly. or you could be hard work and I'm going to go dig ditches, right? That's hard work for an entire day, and so you should be rewarded. But that's not the way the world really works. It rewards you based on the value that you put out into the world, and it's to me it's like it all starts with our paradigms. And if one of my friends and I had this conversation recently, And he was talking about most people think, well, you can't have the legendary love affair, you can't have and the successful business and the the deep spiritual nature to yourself and be a great parent and the successful business. And he went on with like 4 or 5 other things, but why can't you? It's like it's all in the framework that you set up for yourself.
So do you believe in sort of having the right systems in place? Do you believe in sort of passive income and high level coaching and all the kind of things that the online people talk about as a standard? Or do you sort of go, no, that was last year, there's better ways of doing things now?
Well, I believe in deep kind of fundamental philosophies where, and I don't believe in tactics because the tactics change. And, I'm probably more well known in the online space, but I've been moving away from that in maybe the last 7, 8 years or so. And I kind of just fell into the online space. But what I always saw was the deep fundamental aspects. Like I studied, you mentioned when I was 14 and selling medical equipment with my dad's company. And so I fell into telemarketing and then my dad gave me a car if I went out and cold called on doctors. And I pretty quickly learned that cold calling really sucked. and there wasn't much leverage there, right? You're spending your time and you're knocking on doors and hoping that a doctor is going to give you an order, or even if you can get in to talk to a doctor. I mean, you're this little 16-year-old punk. And so one of my doctors actually turned me on to direct response, kind of a copywriting and direct response marketing. And I was like, wow, this is fascinating. I can write an ad or I can write something and have people raise their hands and say they're interested or send me money even. And that was the first kind of taste of leverage. And I totally believe in leverage and time leverage and effort leverage, whatever it is, any way that we can leverage our effort.
So let's sort of get an understanding of your normal day then, because as I said in the introduction, I do stumble across you a lot. And so when you came on the show, I thought, right, this is great because I've got an understanding of what this guy is all about. But you do seem to be omnipresent somehow. You seem to be everywhere. So what is a sort of normal day? Do you get up at 4 o'clock in the morning and only have 2 hours sleep, or do you lay in long? What do you do?
I don't really have a typical day necessarily. I have I really spend a lot of time making sure that I try and hit every aspect of my life. I look at entrepreneurship as this holistic aspect. So more times than not, I'll help get the kids off to school and pack their lunch and hopefully make them a pretty decent breakfast. And then I'll actually spend some time. I really want to make sure that I spend time in the morning by myself, whether it's usually it's doing a little bit of yoga outside on my deck and then meditating and then going off and writing in my journal for a little bit. And then I get going. And if I have a really great day, it's usually the next part is doing something proactive. It could be writing, it could be some sort of content creation, but that doesn't always happen. Sometimes it's into meetings or things going on with the team. But so there's not necessarily a typical day necessarily. And then when I'm traveling, that's all out the window. Not the routine part in the morning, but what happens after that. So
what you're sort of speaking about seems like the utopia that people work towards. But of course, creating, what was it, seven-figure businesses or something, that takes hustle. That takes, persistence and talent and whatever. So getting up and writing a blog post and doing a bit of yoga maybe 15, 20 years ago would have been the last thing you would be doing, I imagine.
I always wanted to make sure that I had a good lifestyle for what I was doing, because to me, an entrepreneur is, a lot of times we're driven by freedom and freedom. We get to set our own rules. And so I'd rather skip an extra hour of, I don't know, whatever, in order to make sure that I take care of myself. And yeah, I wasn't doing the yoga and the meditation 10, 15 years ago, but I was making sure I went out and did something athletic, or I'd go do something just for myself. And it's only been recently that I've really captured it into more of a routine and less of a kind of an ad hoc way.
I'm fascinated by this because one of the things that really I want to grab people and shake them, and I hear it time and time again, and it's like a badge of honor. And they go, when I was in corporate land, I was doing 80 hours a week, and now I work for myself, and I'm doing 120 hours a week. And I think,
sure.
Why are you doing that? Why are you spending more time in front of your desk than anything else? But people do, don't they? They do that.
They do, and yeah, you're right. It is like a badge of honor. It's like, oh, I put in, because it's equaling the amount of time is equaling the amount of effort, hopefully, which will equal the amount of reward. And at some point, it's like, well, I'm doing it for my kids, or I'm doing it for my family, or I'm doing it for that. 10 years from now, I can retire or take it easier, or whatever it is. But that usually never happens, and there's some sort of actually deeper underlying aspect to it, because we're usually not comfortable even taking time for ourselves. We feel guilty. We feel like we shouldn't be doing it. We feel like it's a waste of time. It's I can't remember who told me this, but I usually like to really attribute the people that I hear this from. But someone told me this, and I loved it, which was, we can't fill other people's cups unless our own cup is filled and overflowing, and that has to be from taking care of ourselves, and it's absolutely critical.
Well, I heard Oprah Winfrey talking about when she was younger, people used to say to her, oh, you're full of yourself, like it was a bad thing. And it took her a long time to realise that actually being full of yourself means that you know who you are and you've got enough to share. And it's something that is, you're actually full of yourself. It's your unique capability comes to the fore. And she has obviously created global success based on the principle of really knowing herself and knowing what her talent is and knowing what to deliver to the world. How do you find that in yourself? How do you sort of maintain that persona that you've got that is kind of almost playtime? I'm looking at a picture of you now and I'm wondering, are you in space or are you in in an airplane? But you're certainly flying around in the middle of the air with your laptop with a big smile on your face. That's a kind of Richard Branson kind of, is it work? Is it play? It's just life.
Yeah, I mean, the best entrepreneurs that I know are the ones who totally intermesh work and play, and there's not a real distinction and a demarcation point, and that's where it gets really exciting. And you mentioned knowing yourself, and to me that is incredibly powerful, and that's a never-ending process. So in my latest book that I just wrote called Evolved Enterprise, the framework of it actually starts with you in the middle, because us as the founders, as entrepreneurs, everything has to come from us, and we have to truly know ourselves at the deepest level. And it's not a one time and done kind of process. But so I love different assessment tests. So there's everything from Kolbe, Kolbe, which is a great assessment test on what's called your cognitive ability, which is like how, if you're going to be given a task, what's your natural way of working. Friend that you might know too, Roger Hamilton, he has something called wealth dynamics, which is, Oprah would have been a star in his wealth dynamics kind of process. I think he has 8 different kind of frameworks for who you are and where you kind of, where do you create energy as an entrepreneur. And so mine is creator. So I like creating the stuff and then letting hopefully someone else help turn the wheels and get it out there and make it bigger. And then there's, I think, 6 other kind of frameworks for that. And then there's a bunch of other pieces. There's also a great assessment program called the Enneagram, which has 9 different kind of personality types. And you can start, just as the more and more you research it, there's also a book called Strength Finders. I mean, I've done quite a few of these because all of them kind of give you a little bit of a new facet, right? A new way of looking at yourself.
We are really avid on Strength Finders in Join Up Darts. It's one of the things that I did before I even created the show. And I push it quite heavily because I think it's very, very insightful. And I certainly went with the first strength it came out, yeah, I think that's right. And then the second one, I'm not too sure. And the third one, hang on, this must be wrong. And over a period of 2 years, I realised it's pretty much spot on. It knew me before I knew myself. And my number one strength is futuristic, which I think is so me, because I'm always, this would be amazing. Why don't we do this? Why don't we do that? And it's very much, I never look behind me. I'm always looking in front. And those kind of tests, they are, in certain ways, I think in organisations and corporate, it's kind of old hat. You get given them by HR teams because it's a tick box culture. Oh, we're developing you, take this test. And I never got that much out of them until I went into entrepreneurial. And then I realised the strength of knowing yourself. As I say, corporate land, you just do what they tell you. But in entrepreneurial land, you do what you want, don't you, really?
You definitely do what you want. And, the other thing that's really exciting, David, is I always find that you look back to when you were a kid. So what got you excited as a kid? And a lot of times those are going to be the hints of what you wants to show up for you in a deeper way. And I don't know if this is a time to bring up the Steve Jobs quote or not, but I love it, and it's something that I continue looking back, and I'm like, oh yeah, of course that's what I'm doing, because that's what I was like as a kid. I mean, as a kid, I was kind of a little bit of the class clown. I was in our sixth grade play, but as a fourth grader, I was only fourth grader with a lead role. And I look back on some of the stuff that we do now with Maverick. It's like, we do some silly, we call it Maverick Mayhem, some silly things, and then a bit of a ham, I guess I could be sometimes. And it's just like, oh, of course, that makes total sense. And I look back at some of the promotions and things that we did that had a lot of success. It was like me in my Halloween outfit as Count Yanik, which is the old Sesame Street, the Count.
Yes.
1, 2, 3, right? And my wife absolutely hates Halloween because I have a rule that I don't break character for Halloween. And so the Count doesn't have very many things to say. But so then I turned the Count into this animated Yanik, Count Yanik, and then that was like one of a big success that we had for launching a product. So, all these things continue just showing up if you let them. And I wanted to be a cartoonist and a professional hockey player as a kid. And the pro hockey part hasn't really shown up, but the cartoonist part, actually in my latest book and in my journal, like my drawings have actually started coming back around where that has become now this unique aspect of expressing what I could be sharing, and not just in words or not just in video, but pictures, and people seem to really love them. So it's interesting how they all come back full circle. And then the adventure piece was something that we kind of played around with for a while, and then I added it to what we're doing with entrepreneurs, and it's just fascinating to see how it becomes this unique expression of who you are.
Did you like being stupid, Yanik? Did you like being playful? Because I have certainly. I've always had that in me, but I think I suppressed it for a long time. And I used to, in corporate land, go around flicking people's ears and just kind of doing silly things just for the sake of it, and doing practical jokes. But the company never liked it. And I used to get pulled into board meetings. Oh, you're not taking this seriously. And I said, well, yes, I am. I'm just trying to have fun at the same time. But there's a deep part of me that just wants to be playful and have fun. And that's why, I don't know many other podcasts who I sing a lot on this show. I burst into song all over the time, just because it's me, and I want to translate that out there in the world. I don't want to just be hidden behind something. Are you willing to go, yeah, I'm a bit stupid, I like playing, I like having fun?
Yeah, so I think words are really important, right? So to me, I wouldn't say it's stupid. I think it's playful. I think it's releasing your inner child. It's just, we call it Maverick Mayhem sometimes, or mischief, but it's fun. Like, why not? And that's also a unique expression of who you are. Like, that's, to me, what makes your podcast different, right? So I've been on a lot of podcasts. I don't think I've ever had a host sing or do anything like that. And like, it's so important, because that way there's no one else, everyone's heard this, you're as unique as a snowflake or whatever.
Go on,
it is.
sing it. You can't just say those words. You've got to sing it to me. Romance me, Yanik. Romance me.
David, you're unique as a snowflake. Actually, I do have a karaoke character. His name is Boris Yankovic, and he does only Neil Diamond covers as a Russian immigrant. This
is something we've got to see online. Have we ever seen this?
This is something for sure.
You and Branson karaoke duet. This would be amazing, wouldn't it?
Yeah. Well, Richard is so much like that. Actually, Richard hates pranks being played on him, but he loves pranking others. And he got me good one time, very, very early on, the very first time I came to Necker, where we were sort of, me and another guy were carrying on till all hours of the night, and then ended up calling some of the other guests and bugging them and telling them to come back to the bar, and just having a good old time. And so I get a letter at dinner that says, "Dear Mr. Silver, as one of the world's most exclusive islands, as you know, that some of your behavior has had some of our guests say that they've had a less than optimal experience," or something to that effect. So effective 8 p.m. tonight, we'll be moving you to a less exclusive island. Thank you for your understanding, or something like that. And so I look at the letter and I'm like, oh shit. And I turned to the girl next to me. I'm like, this is a joke, right? She's like, well, I don't know. Go with your gut. And I'm like, all right. So I handed it off to Richard, and he's like, oh, the manager's it was signed by the manager. He's like, well, the manager's a bit of a serious bloke, but I'll have a word with him. And then he just waits. And he's like, I got you. And it was just,
He got you a big one. Yeah, got you a big one.
That was a good one. I mean, for that moment when he said, yeah, the manager's serious and I'll have a word with him. That was when I was like, oh, shoot, maybe this is right. But yeah, he doesn't like jokes played on him, but he's a good sport. I mean, I dressed up as a showgirl one time and brought him out. He had a keynote that he was doing for one of my friends' companies in Vegas. And me and a real showgirl escorted him out, and I had like feather boas all over my face so he couldn't see me, and escorted him up to stage. And then the host said, well, since we had to have you escorted by two lovely Vegas showgirls, but your contract is pretty expensive to bring you in to speak, so we could only afford one lovely showgirl. And that's when I revealed myself, and he just got a great big kick out of it, and we have this great photo of us. So he loves that stuff for sure.
Now, I'm actually, before we play the words of Jim Carrey that's going to take us into the second stage of the conversation, I'm reading his biography at the moment. And it's a classic way of understanding that global empires are built more on, oh my God, what the hell are we going to do moments, more than anything else. He literally was robbing Peter to pay Paul, left, right and centre all the way through. Is that a common way that businesses are started?
Yeah.
He went from one thing to another, to another, to another, and literally all of them weren't really connected in some way, but he pulled it off. Do you have those, oh my God, what the hell am I doing moments?
Always. I think if you're an entrepreneur, you have to have them, or else you're not growing. And, for me, it was about a little over 9 years ago, and I call it this cosmic alarm clock that went off. And I was doing really well, making a lot of money online, and I was, by all accounts, outside looking in, very successful, and I was, great family, great reputation, which isn't always that easy in the internet marketing space. But I just asked myself, if I was going to continue doing this like 10 years from now, would I be happy? And it sounds like a simple question, but the answer was no. And it was like, okay, so what do I want to do? And that went to a lot of journaling and a lot of reflection, and came out with these three interconnected circles of a dollar sign, a happy face, and a heart. And to me, I think those are all interconnected. And then it started this idea of something called Maverick Business Adventures. And that was just going to be adventure trips for entrepreneurs, and we do business on them, have sessions, and then also have some sort of charity component. And I'm like, okay, this is what I want to do. And fast forward about $400,000 in, when the publishing company is paying for a lot of the bills, because Maverick isn't necessarily able to stand on its own 2 feet, my wife is like, okay, so what the hell are you doing? And I'm like, well, that's a great question. I have no idea. But I knew there was something big there, and it forced me to reevaluate and really think about, is my why big enough here? And is it worth it?
So when you're laying in bed with your wife, and we're not going to ask too many questions about that, unless you want to share, obviously. But when you're laying in bed, does she sort of look at you and go, Yanik, you're at it again. You're at it again. Just be happy with where you are. Does she like these sort of flights of fancy, or is it one thing that she's just for a few months, just let it settle?
So she's definitely my she's a great sort of compliment to me, because I'm adventurous and just willing to say yes, and without really thinking totally through it. But she's willing to stand by my side. And then at some point she does insert herself and say, are you thinking about this, three steps ahead that could be a big obstacle and a big roadblock. And so she gives me enough leeway and enough sort of rope to figure out something. And then if she sees that it's going in a pretty bad direction, like that was going, then she's going to step in and say, what are you doing?
And how does she know that? Because, my wife doesn't understand what I'm doing. Really, she doesn't. And she likes the fact that I go in and I make sure that the TV's tuned in properly. And, that's as much of her technicality she wants from me. So how does your wife sort of understand the nuts and bolts of your business?
I don't know if she totally understands all the nuts and bolts of it. I don't think she wants to necessarily, but she does insert herself into some of the financial aspects so that she can see what's going on and where some of the expenses are and where some of the revenues coming in, so that she can keep an eye on that. and she's definitely more security minded than I am, and as long as she has kind of a certain pot that or nest egg that she feels comfortable with, then she's okay. Like I remember when I was paying for my space flight ticket, she said, you absolutely cannot take any money out of our savings account. And I'm like, okay, sure, no problem. And then so that opens up, it could be either, okay, well, I'm not going to do it, or I'm going to decide how to do it. And then I created a product to pay for my Virgin Galactic space flight. So, it was one of those things where she gave me an opportunity to go do it, but not to sacrifice any of our security.
Well, let's play the words of Jim Carrey, as I mentioned earlier, and then we're going to talk a little bit more about this. Jim Carrey.
My father could have been a great comedian, but he didn't believe that was possible for him. And so he made a conservative choice. Instead, he got a safe job as an accountant. And when I was 12 years old, he was let go from that safe job. And our family had to do whatever we could to survive. I learned many great lessons from my father, not the least of which was that you can fail at what you don't want. So you might as well take a chance on doing what you love.
Now, I think those words really play into your spirit. The fact that you want to go up into space and you will find a way of doing it. It's not about results for you. It's more about how it's going to make you feel. Would that be right?
Yeah, it's about, so I stumbled onto this question that I really love and I always tell people about, because to me, I think questions are the things that are so invaluable. They dictate our answers and they open up possibilities for us. And so this one question from Brené Brown's book, Daring Greatly, is kind of paraphrased. And the question is, what would you do even if you knew it would fail? So stop and think about this for a second, Dave, because this is a big one. It's like, what would we do? What would we put our full life and our energy into, even if we knew it would quote unquote fail? And so that takes away, I don't know if you've studied any of like the Bhagavad Gita, some of the other religious texts out there, but one of the key principles in there is that you're not entitled to the fruit of your labor, but only to your labor, essentially. And so if you put your full heart and soul into something, that's the reward in and of itself, right? So think back to when you put everything you've got into something, then, I bet you were satisfied and content, and it didn't matter necessarily what happened after. And so this question really gets to that crux of the matter of what would you do even if you knew it would fail.
I think the first time I've ever had that is doing this. I think I've always been after the dollar or the pound or some kind of financial reward. But doing this show, fortunately, it's gone very well and it's providing me with an income. So it's great. But actually, take away all that, I think I'd still do it. I think it's the task more than anything. Would that be the same sort of vibe that you're bringing up? It
is, yeah. And so, the Evolved Enterprise book, like I remember Missy, my wife, asking me, she's like, so how many do you want to sell? And, what are you going to be, what's success look like for that? And I'm like, honestly, I don't care if I sell one copy, because I truly put my full heart and soul into that book and where I saw the shift going on in business of how business can make the greatest difference in the world. And it was just really exciting to do that and to put out the book in a way that had my own doodles and illustrations in there and to really be this culmination of kind of this 15 years of being in business and helping entrepreneurs either reinvent themselves, that cosmic alarm clock going off and saying, okay, now what? Or new entrepreneurs who wanted to create this from the get-go.
Well, I read your book, and I'll be honest, there was one story, and it's a bit of a sort of bizarre story. It's about your daughter's teeth. But I started quoting that to people because as I was reading it, I thought, this is genius because it's so simplistic, but it's true as well. Tell us the teeth story. Yeah,
so my daughter, who's now 9 next week, this is when I think she was, I don't know, maybe five or six. And she has an older brother who's almost 2 years older than her. And so she's a little bit money driven and she's funny like that. And then she's like, well, I want a wiggly tooth. And Zach, her older brother, had already lost maybe 3 or 4 or 5 by this point, and she knew the tooth fairy came and gave him a couple dollars. She's like, I want a wiggly tooth. Like, when am I going to get a wiggly tooth? I'm like, I don't know when. And it was just like this, we don't know when. It's just in this divine timing, and that's what I kind of link up to this cosmic alarm clock. It's like we don't know when this cosmic alarm clock is going to go off, and a lot of people might hit snooze on it. and say, okay, I'm doing fine as is, or no, I can never do that, or I can, I won't be able to do what I really love to do, or for whatever reason they turn off their alarm clock. Or some people take that alarm clock and say, okay, well, I am gonna actually wake up, and I'm gonna go at it and see, whatever the hell I really love and is driving me. And a lot of times, it's not. And I'm curious if this is the case for you or other guests that you've had, because it definitely is the case for me and other people I've talked to. Is what we think is our sort of ultimate goal that we're going for, and we start moving towards, is not even that ultimate goal. A lot of times, the byproduct of it is where even more of our happiness and where our true selves really lie.
Yeah, I think you find the real dream on the way towards the dream, isn't it? Because I do an exercise with my coaching group, and we have your perfect day. A lot of people do this, where you actually sit down and you create your perfect day. And I did that before I started the show and other things that I'm doing. And I suddenly realized one day that I'd achieved my perfect day, and it was a little bit rubbish. It was kind of, well, it's got to be better than this, surely, And I realised that I was setting out my perfect day to what I thought was possible in corporate land, where I had to be at my desk at 9 o'clock and I couldn't leave till 5. So I was having, I don't want to be at my desk at a certain time, and I don't want to do this and I don't want to do that. And it was all basically to give me pleasure against my pain points that I used to be in. And now I've got a new perfect day that I'm working towards, and I look at it and I think, is this possible? But it's the only way forward. So yeah, you find your real dream by saying goodbye to your first dream, and I reckon I'm going to have 4 or 5 of those perfect days until I'm going up in a spaceship and not having to pay for it either.
And why not? Right? Like why couldn't we do that? And so I mean, if going back, the spaceship triggered again, thinking about Branson, Virgin Galactic. In my sort of, I tell people to create an ultimate life list, right? What do they want to do? What do they want to have? Who they want to meet? What do they want to experience? And one of the things I wrote way a long time ago was have lunch with Richard Branson. He was one of my biggest business heroes.
Yeah.
And so I could never have imagined what would have opened up, and it turned into something so much bigger, where now, I don't know, I've probably had 50 lunches with Richard. But it's like there's something that I read recently that I loved. I think it was from the Surrender Experiment by Michael Singer, and he talks about that most people don't believe that life actually has even more. Life wants even more for us than we even do, and to to accept that and to be willing to be open to that.
I think that's true as well, but I do think also that you've got to pay your dues. I always liken it that it's there waiting for you, but you've got to work reasonably hard to get it. If you're just sitting on your sofa, it's like the old law of attraction thing, whether you believe that or you don't. But so many people almost think that you just have to sit on your sofa going Lamborghini, Lamborghini, and then it's going to turn up. I do think that you've got to have the hustle. You've got to have the ability to overcome the obstacles. But once you've done enough of it, it's like life goes, yeah, all right, you've proved yourself. Here you go. And run with it, my boy. Like Forrest Gump, run the country with those gifts. What do you think?
So I'll give you my take on it. There's 2. One is, I think that's more about proving to ourselves that we deserve it. Yeah. And when we feel we deserve it, then we're going to get it. And so for one person, it could be, I woke up and I don't know, put in an hour of whatever. And that was, now I feel like I really deserve it, and it's coming my way. For someone else, they might feel like, okay, I need to put 8 hours a day in for 5 years in order to deserve it and feel like it's available. The other part to me is I don't totally believe in goal setting. I believe in asking for what the essence is of what you want. So like that perfect day formula or perfect day process is really powerful if you can get to the essence of what you want. Like, so your part of your first one was not wanting to show up at your desk at a certain time.
Yes.
So that the essence of that was, the freedom to do what you want with, and when you wanted to. And so that's shown up. Like, I remember writing an entry in my journal. I talked a little bit about this in the book about when I was 40 years old. So it was written when I was maybe 37 or 36. And this is when I was kind of going through some of the sideways stuff with my business, trying to figure it out. And part of it was, how much money was in the bank, sort of net worth, what I was driving. So very specific stuff. and who I was hanging out with, all sorts of stuff. And then I read it to my wife, and she's like, "Well, are you upset that it hasn't necessarily happened?" And I'm like, I looked at it, I thought about it for a moment. I'm like, not really, because I have pretty much all of these. If I look at the essence of what they were, right? The net worth of the money in the bank was to go do what I want with who I want, and have the freedom to go do pretty much what I want. And then the hanging out with, I forgot who I wrote hanging out with, but I had an even better thing that showed up, which was we had an event for Virgin Galactic literally on my 40th birthday, and then I went on a safari with Richard like a week after. So I didn't write that in my journal, but it was even better. And so I got to the essence of pretty much everything that I wanted in that journal entry. And so if you can get down to the essence, instead of saying I want the Lamborghini, like what do you really want? You want the car that makes you feel, I don't know, successful, or you have if you're into sports cars, you want that sportiness or the acceleration or whatever it is. And there's sometimes you do need the actual object to realize that the object is not everything that you wanted it to be. So I find two people are kind of going both directions. One is they got the thing, and then they're like, this isn't that great. And what's let me start exploring what really makes me happy. Or they want a bigger thing. They want the limited edition Lamborghini that's $1 million instead of $300,000. And then that creates this never-ending treadmill, and that's really tough to get off of.
I've got this image of you and your wife in the kitchen, and the phone rings, and she picks it up, and she says, "Yanik, it's Richard. Oh, tell him I'm not here. Tell him I'm not here."
Yeah, well, he just sent me an email recently, and he challenged me to something which will be very, very interesting, as a triathlon in Sicily, in Italy. So we'll see how that goes. And I did sign up for that, and I've never done a triathlon before.
But do these things scare you? Did you have those same thoughts that people have of, oh, what happens if it doesn't work? Or do you just plow through it? Because it seems to me, at your core, as I said right at the very beginning, you seem to look at things in a different way than the majority of us.
I don't know, but what's the worst that can happen?
Yeah, you're absolutely right. What is the worst that can happen? But I would argue that the world is full of people that are saying to themselves, what could happen?
Yeah, they are.
That's different.
And so I think, and this is what my wife and I discuss all the time, because she is one of those people that are like, well, this could happen. Like, we sent our kids off to camp, and she's like, well, this could happen. This could happen. I'm like, well, you could just turn that exact same thing around and use it in a positive imagination sense and say, what's the best thing that could happen? And
she must have smacked you for saying that to her.
Yeah, she doesn't like that. But it's the exact same process at work. And so if you are wired like that, give yourself some time to go do that, and then give yourself some time to go do it the opposite way. And I'm trying to teach my daughter that there's two stories, right? So there's somewhat objective facts that show up. And so for her, one night she had a small little meltdown because she didn't get a lightning bug to hang out with her for longer than a couple seconds. And I'm like, okay, so that's our objective fact of what happened. And I'm like, well, you wanted a lightning bug. You said you wanted one. And then so we could either say we're really excited and grateful that there are even like 2 or 3 of them out this early in the season and that we got to play with one, or you could be upset. So, there's really 2 ways, actually multiple ways all the time of writing that story. And you get to be that author, and you get to create that story.
Let's talk about your Maverick Group, because this is a sort of high-level coaching for sort of high achievers, and I think they've got to be earning a certain amount of money to get into this. How do you, when you've got these guys all surrounding you, because I was talking to a guy who was a multi-millionaire, I don't know, 900 million, whatever, and he went into a room one day, and it was full of billionaires, and he said he felt not worthy. Even though they're just humans, it was a kind of mental thing that he had to overcome, even though, from my side of the fence, he'd done really, really well. Now, when you're leading, and you are leading and you're facilitating this group of people, how do you know that you're providing enough value for them to gain from what they're actually putting into it? Because people struggle with that, don't they? They want to make the most perfect product before they launch because they want to over deliver. How do you do that with these guys who have obviously got everything already? Yeah, so it's really tough to be the alpha dog in every aspect. Yeah, right. You're never there's always going to be somebody who has 2 billion instead of 1 billion, or has 20
20 businesses instead of your 3 or whatever it is. And so as we start comparing it, it's a ultimate recipe to make yourself unhappy and make yourself kind of go crazy and question yourself. And so my purpose, it's never been necessarily about me being the guru or the authority here. It's me being hopefully the person that can bring these other people together who are all exceptional in their own right. And because I've sort of come from that same, I'm one of them in one aspect. So I know what they're going through in their world and in their business, but I don't ever believe that I have all the answers. So by bringing them together, and then also I think of it as almost like creating a sandbox, and creating that sandbox where I know that synchronicities and serendipities are going to be at play, and they're going to get what they need out of finding the right person there, or the right resource, or the right connection that's going to happen at the right time. And so I believe in that. And then I also believe in a little bit of prodding and creating the process so that it happens more. So we create good, meaningful conversations, and then it's up to them how vulnerable they want to be, or how forthright they want to be, and you only get out what you put into it. So then it becomes up to them.
But how do you also sort of up level? So they're in it for a year, and the next year you've got to do different things. Is it just being fun and creative within the same theme, or do you think, well, last year we did this, so we've got to do bigger? Because I see it in a very small scale. I see it happening big time in the United Kingdom. We now have proms, which we never had. I blame them. I blame the Americans for this.
This is high school prom?
This is high school proms. Now, when I went through school, you basically walked out at the end of the day, and that's it. There was nothing. And now sort of 9-year-olds are being picked up with limousines and being taken to parties and stuff. And as I say, I blame the Americans. I blame the Americans.
You should.
Now, I say to my wife, you've got to stop this, because next year you've got to outdo it. And then the year after, they're going to have 3 limousines and then 4 limousines and a jacuzzi. It's just going to keep bigger and bigger and bigger. How do you up level with your own group so that it doesn't get boring, but you don't fall into that same trap?
Yeah, it's a great question, because what we do is very experiential too. So we move around the events, and so that it's never the same. It's never the exact same kind of event. They can't, does it like there's a lot of, oh, I missed, I don't know, so-and-so. And they're like, oh man, I can't believe I missed that. But we don't really repeat events. So it's partially it's definitely a double-edged sword, because our team has to continually reinvent, but at the same time, it keeps things fresh. And we have 3 pillars that we're always working on. It's the business side, it's the impact side, so it's some sort of new way that these entrepreneurs can make a difference and make an impact, whether through a charity or a nonprofit or young entrepreneurs, or a unique adventure and experience as a third leg of what we do. And so it's always, those 3 big pieces are always different. And I don't ever think, oh, we have to make this version even better than what we did before. I just know that if we deliver a great experience on each of those 3, then it'll turn into a great event.
And it ties up with your playfulness, really, doesn't it? The ability to create this thing and think, oh, we'll do this time and we'll do that next time.
It does, for sure, and I'm a big believer in surprise and delight, and like we might tell them, okay, show up and you have to have one of 4 costumes. I forgot what we told them. It was like a doctor costume, a cheerleader costume, and something else. And then we had a Hollywood quality makeup artist come in and make everyone into zombies, and then we did a zombie bar crawl on a random Monday night. So I like the aspect of, they show up with part of the picture, and then they don't know what's happening.
I like the idea of a room full of cheerleaders myself, and
zombie cheerleaders.
Well, I don't mind any cheerleaders. That works for me. I went to see the Dallas Cowboys once. I couldn't concentrate on the game at all. Why do they do that? Why do they put these gorgeous jumping around ladies right in front of a sporting event? I'm there to watch the action.
Yeah, I have no idea. It's definitely a very American thing.
I don't understand it either. But what I do understand is the power of these words that I'm going to play now. We've spoken about them. We've spoken about the guy. Let's hear him. This is Steve Jobs.
Of course, it was impossible to connect the dots looking forward when I was in college. But it was very, very clear looking backwards 10 years later. Again, you can't connect the dots looking forward. You can only connect them looking backwards. So you have to trust that the dots will somehow connect in your future. You have to trust in something, your gut, destiny, life, karma, whatever. Because believing that the dots will connect down the road will give you the confidence to follow your heart, even when it leads you off the well-worn path. And that will make all the difference.
Now, your path started sort of even further than your success. Obviously, one of the big dots in your life was being taken as a 2-year-old from Russia over to America, which is a change of culture, change of language, everything. Does that sort of set a stall out for what you've achieved since?
I think so. I mean, I think it has to, right? Because I saw my parents, who worked really hard at whatever was given to them. Like, they had no entitlement mentality. They would take whatever job was open to them. And I remember my father would also do extra work. He'd moonlight on the side, repairing medical equipment for some of the doctors he worked with at the hospital he worked at. And then he took the tough sort of route and said, okay, the administrators found out about it and they were going to either fire him or he had to stop. And he took the less worn path and said, okay, well, I'm gonna do my own thing here. And that had a profound effect on me growing up in a family business.
And so when you look back over your life, where would you say your big dot occurred, where things really started going your way after the sort of the early struggles, or maybe it was part of the struggles in the early days?
I think that was all part of it, was feeling like, I mean, I was telling my wife the other day, because she was laughing at me because I finally got running shoes now to go do this triathlon. And I said, well, I never had sneakers until I was in 7th grade. Because I was this immigrant child and I had like these leather sandals. And so feeling different was always sort of part of my story. And I don't think that's such a bad thing, because I remember when I got my car and I started listening to people like Earl Nightingale, who became a huge mentor for me, listened to him over and over again. My friends would get in the car and they'd look at all these cassette tapes and they're like, what is this stuff? I'm like, oh, don't worry about it. But he was the first person that really gave me permission to think differently. And to say that, I think it was either Lead the Field or The Strangest Secret, talking about if 95% of people aren't as successful, then do what 5% of people do. Yeah. That's usually just doing the opposite. And it, just it's like, oh yeah, of course. It gave me kind of words to what I was already thinking and what I was already brought up in, but I didn't realize it. And so that was one dot for sure. And then I look back on, when I was 17, when one of my biggest medical equipment clients that I sold him in his entire surgery center. He gave me a J. Abraham tape. And I was like, oh, wow, this is really fascinating. That was when, talking about not cold calling anymore. And that was a huge dot to just get so fascinated. So Earl Nightingale, again, said you could become an expert in any subject by reading or studying for 1 hour a day for 3 hours, or world-class expert for 1 hour for a day for 5 years. And I'm like, well, what happens if you do it for 2 hours a day or 3 hours a day? And I was just enthralled by direct response marketing and copywriting and persuasion and influence, like via not talking to somebody, not having to see them in person. And that was a huge dot.
You're kind of bloody minded, aren't you, Yanik? I can sense this.
I get really excited by that aspect. And then I go deeper and deeper. Like, I want to know the source. Like, okay, who inspired J. Abraham? Who inspired that person? Who inspired Claude Hopkins? And then I just dig deeper and deeper, and it gets to me like I go back to the source and go back to the source, and it gets exciting. And then I guess another dot for sure would be leaving my father's office. Like I had this idea of putting out this course to teach doctors, because those are the people I worked with anyway. And I had started consulting with a few of them, and I knew that there was no leverage consulting. Like, I was only trading my time for money. And so I created this course. I didn't even create the course. I just created a sales letter for the course. And I wrote an ad and put it out in Dermatologic Surgery Journal, Dermatology, I forgot what it was. Something that is not a very well read, but only by dermatologists who wanted more cosmetic patients. And got 10 responses, and nobody ordered. And then I put out a second notice and nobody ordered. And I remember calling the office of this one place that I had bought this kit from, teaching me how to do this. It was a Dan Kennedy, Jeff Paul product. And I called and I talked to this woman, Heather, and she's like, oh, honey, just mail the third notice. I'm like, okay. And so I mailed the third notice, and literally on the day of the deadline got the $900 order. And it was like, wow, there's something that clicks when something that you finally put out and someone else is giving you money for. Like, it gave me such tremendous energy to go go do it. Like, I remember checking the fax machine for a month or 21 days waiting for this order form to come back, and is in my dad's office, and it was just orders for other stuff, never my own product. And finally on that last day, out comes the fax, and it was just so amazing. And then of course I had to stay up till like 3 o'clock in the morning, 4 o'clock in the morning, finishing this product and getting it out there. And but that was a huge dot to say I could sell my own stuff.
And they do all build up, as Jobs was saying. You can't see it at a time, can you? But you can. I can look back to my journey to a 9-year-old. Really, I can. And it's just step after step after step. But it's so linear now. Now I know it makes a nice story, but I do think it's true.
It's absolutely true. And one of the things that I love, and I teach the people that I work with, is to write your own mythic story, and create your own mythology, and create your own just epic story of what you already know what happened up till now, but you can create your own meaning behind it. And so think of it from this epic like hero's journey or a Greek mythology, whatever you want to do with it. But it becomes really exciting when you start looking at it in a he talked about destiny or karma, like just believing that you are destined for greatness. Like there's something there. And when I talk to audiences, I ask them to raise their hands who feels like they're destined for greatness. And then I have them close their eyes because I don't want them feeling just, embarrassed. So about 85% of them raise their hands, and then I have them open their eyes, and I'm like, well, you guys are in the right room. And there is something to that. And I absolutely believe it, that destiny of greatness. And you look at the people who have achieved a lot of meaningful things in this world, they feel like they were here for a reason. And so that creates your big why of what you're doing.
No, I buy into this totally. I've had that feeling ever since I was a young boy that I never fitted in all the way through. Right. I just felt there was something more, and it could have been being an author. It could have been being the lead singer of Duran Duran. It could have been anything. But, I never felt that I fitted in. And this is the first time, funnily enough, that in my whole life, I'm doing something that not only do I feel that I fit in, but every single person that I speak to almost says to me, yes, I can hear this. This is where you should be. It's like confirmation. And it's weird. I never had that in corporate land at all. People just accepted you were there to do a job. But now people almost want to tell me that I'm doing a good job. It's a bizarre way. But it fosters that personal belief in yourself.
It does. And it opens up all these new possibilities. And you wouldn't even, looking back and even looking forward, you're going to be like, oh, my God, I can't believe because of this relationship or because of this one interview, this turned into this. And it's like, wow, this is really amazing. And when I talk about destiny of greatness too, there's one thing I want to point out, and I'm not talking about it from this egotistical side of we have such a big head that we're destined for greatness, but it's like you have these resources and talents at your disposal, and you want to put out your most meaningful work into the world and really leave an impact in that way.
Now, just before we send you back in time, because it is the end of the show on the Sermon on the Mic, I do have a question that probably every single listener out there wants to ask. But when you went up in space, A, did you throw up? And B, was it as good as you thought it was going to be?
Well, I haven't been up officially in space yet. The picture you're seeing on Skype is me in a zero-gravity flight, which is you get 30 seconds of zero-gravity time in I think it's like a 767 that's retrofitted, and it does these parabolas. So no throwing up, and I've done that twice.
But do you think it's going to be as good, or is it like when you go, shark diving or something, you think, oh, actually, I thought it was going to be a bit better than this?
That's a great question. And I had the opportunity to talk to Anusha Ansari, who was the first Persian woman to go up into space, like legit space, like the ISS, International Space Station. And I asked her that question. I said, that she had wanted to go up into space since she was like a tiny little girl, and that was her dream, and it finally came true. And she's like, honestly, I was depressed after, because there was nothing else I was looking forward to. And then it took her some time to say, okay, what's my next dream? And then also to teach about dreams. And so I think that if I was 5-10 years younger, I would be like, okay, what's the next thing? Okay, we're going to orbit the Earth, or we're going to walk on the moon, or whatever it is, and not be in that moment and not feel totally present. But that's one of the things that I've continued to work on, and not have to have the next big bungee jump or the next big adventure, and just fully appreciate that moment.
Well, hopefully you're going to appreciate this next moment in your life, because this is a journey that you can only go on this show, where we're going to send you back in time to have a one-on-one with your younger self. And if you could go back in time and speak to the young Yanik, what age would you choose and what advice would you give? Well, we're going to find out, because I'm going to play the music, and when it fades, you're up. This is the Sermon on the Mic.
Here we go with the best bit of the show, the Sermon on the Mic. The Sermon on the Mic.
Hello, little Yanik. This is your higher self. This is your more experienced in the future version of yourself. And I'm going to be talking to you anytime that you have a hard decision or something that seems hard. And one of the things that I want you to know is it doesn't matter. It's always right. It's always wonderful. And you'll start seeing magic all around you that can lead you in the right direction. You'll start seeing these synchronicities, and you'll start seeing things open up in divine timing, and people showing up in the right way, and books literally falling off the shelf or being handed to you that have the answers that you need, as long as you're open and aware and looking for it. And the other thing is, I want you to start thinking about how you're going to take better care of yourself even earlier, and think about some stuff that sounds maybe really weird now, like meditating or doing yoga, or having deep appreciation and gratitude in a book like a journal, and start keeping a journal even earlier. And thinking about also just giving yourself intentional white space, just hanging out and not having a reason, not having to have a reason to do anything, and just seeing what happens. And you're always following your heart, and that's never going to lead you astray. And it's always perfect.
Mr. Silver, what's the number one best way that our audience can connect with you, sir?
Probably right now on the book page, so evolvedenterprise.com, or at my blog, yaniksilver.com.
We'll have all the links on the show notes. Thank you so much for spending time with us today, joining up those dots. And please come back again when you have more dots to join up, because I do believe that by joining up the dots and connecting our past is the best way to build our futures. Mr. Yanik Silver, thank you so much.
Thanks, David. That was fun.
So do you fancy going up into space? Do you fancy creating multiple seven-figure businesses? Do you fancy playing and doing yoga in the morning? Well, he proved that it's possible. He proved that it's about mindset, it's about perseverance, it's about everything that we talk about on Join Up Dots. And anyone out there, you're no different from these guys. You're no different from anyone that you've heard on all the different shows. It's just that they've gone for it, and they have overcome the obstacles, and they've knocked on doors, and they've flexed the old hustle muscle. And every single one of you can have the dream. I totally believe that, and I'm not just saying that. And if you want to email me and say it's not possible, I'm not going to get the dream, then I'm going to email you back personally and probably give you a voicemail telling you why I think you're wrong, because it's there for you. Thank you so much for listening to this episode, and until the next time, this was David Ralph, and that was Join Up Dots. Thanks very much. Bye-bye.
David doesn't want you to become a faded version of the brilliant self you were once to become. So he's put together an amazing guide for you called the 8 Pieces of Advice that every successful entrepreneur practices, including the 2 that changed his life. Head over to joinupdots.com to download this amazing guide for free, and we'll see you tomorrow on Join Up Dots.